so confident they'll make the playoffs that if they don't, I'll wear a Giants or a Dodgers jersey on one of our podcasts.
You don't need the pressure of always trying to perform here at the major league level, so that might be a good thing.
He talked about the athleticism of this Padres team last time out, and he just embodies it.
Well, hello, friends. We're back for another episode of the BCSC podcast. Andy Bishop, joined by Brian Vilvin. We're without Thomas today, but the three amigos will get together again here in a few days. Brian, what's going on, my man?
Hey, B, good to see you. Happy to be doing this again. Bummed we don't have Thomas with us today, but we'll try to hold down the fort.
Absolutely. Well, we're ready for another week of sports. Exciting weekend, especially for us Padres fans. He's had a few other sports going on. The PGA Championship, a lot of fun to watch. Basketball continues. We'll start with our Padres, Brian. A fun, exciting weekend as they take 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks. Most notably on Sunday, as pitcher Dinelson Lamet takes a no-hitter into the 6th inning, finishes going 6 2/3, 11 strikeouts, only allowing 2 base runners. And then the offense provides 6 home runs, most of which came off Diamondbacks ace Madison Bumgarner. What was your impression from the weekend against the Diamondbacks, Brian?
It was that game yesterday was huge. You got to win that series. Taking 2 out of 3 was really important. If they had lost that game, the Diamondbacks, I believe, would only be a game behind the Pods. And all the teams that aren't the Dodgers are the teams you're fighting with to try to get that guaranteed second spot. Of course, it would be great to finish first in the division, but that game was huge yesterday. I can't think of a better guy to have going. I mean, I love Chris Paddock, and I'm kind of like, torn between the two, which one is 1 and 1A. It's great to have that kind of problem. But Dinelson Lamet just went in there and got the job done. He had no-hit stuff. I thought there was a chance he was going to get it. It might have been, they had a 9-0 lead, so you don't want him to try to get a little too fancy and try to just, mess around. So I liked his approach. He was aggressive. No walks for Lamet, which in the past, that's been like his Achilles heel. He did drill that guy on a 2-strike count. But other than that, no walks on the afternoon. Double-digit strikeouts, like just an impressive performance. He was the story, even though the Pods hit 6 home runs in the first 3 innings. Like it takes something special to upstage that type of offensive performance. I was really impressed with Lamet yesterday.
Yeah, for us Padres fans, we are still holding out hope that somebody will deliver us a no-hitter. The franchise without a no-hitter in their 50-plus year history.
Well, with the
staff
we have, I was just going to say, with the staff we have, Andy, it's got to be just a matter of time before we get it done. Even there's been multiple times in a 16-game season so far where we've been on no-hitter watch. So, how do you feel about the guys we have and the guys that are waiting in the wings to come up? Like, it's got to be our time at some point, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about Paddock and Lamet. I think in order for it to happen, they're just going to have to be a little bit more efficient. When I saw Lamet had thrown 40 pitches through 3 innings, I had to take a step back and say, you got to kind of be projected towards maybe a 100 pitch or so outing through that 9 innings. Because once you get up to that 110, 120 mark, I don't like the chances as much. But with this staff, with Patino and Gore coming up, I mean, as good a chance as ever within the next couple of years with these young arms. So hopefully it happens sometime.
That's a great point too, Andy, on the pitch count, because Lamet, the most he had thrown in a start was 84 pitches. So, if he had gotten through that 7th and into the 8th, and all of a sudden he's sitting at, 90, almost 100 pitches, because he struck so many guys out, like the pitch count's going to be high. What do you think Jay Stingler would have done? Like, there's a lot of pressure to leave the guy in, but it's a 60-game season. You can't I don't know. Do you try to go for it and let the guy do it, and all of a sudden he throws 115 pitches and gets injured? Like, I don't know, a guy coming off Tommy John too. That would have been something.
Yeah, certainly a tough decision. I think this would be a year to do it where you can, it is a short season, so the guys aren't going to be making 25 or 30 starts. It's going to be 10 to 12 maybe. And, if they go deep in one of those, you still have a lot of other guys that you can put into the starting rotation if, they need to take a day off during one of their spots. So here we are going into the week, another week against the Dodgers, round 2 against our enemy up in LA. They got the best of us last week in a 3-game set. I know we haven't talked since before the start of that series. The Padres were on track to maybe win that finale, and then it was cut short by a double play, a fly out, and then an out at the plate on a throw by Chris Taylor from left field. Brian, I don't wish to bring back that memory, but how heartbroken did you feel on that final play of the series?
Well, when Manny first made contact, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, did he just hit one out? And he kind of reacted like, oh yeah, I got this. So I overreacted, kind of like Dodger fans do. But then when I saw I was going to be caught by Taylor, I thought he was totally deep enough. I was like, okay, this is going to be a, sac fly and we tie the game and see what happens in extras, or, if the next man up gets a shot here. But yeah, I mean, it took a perfect throw. So often you see those throws up the line a little bit, or, a foot in either direction and Grisham's safe at home.
Yeah.
It took a perfect strike from Taylor. That guy, I just dislike the Dodgers so much, but they're so good. And like the next day I watched a little bit of the Dodger game, and Chris Taylor was playing shortstop. Like, they have so many guys who can just play all over the field. Bellinger plays all the outfield positions and first base. Like, That's just such a Dodger thing for a guy who plays shortstop sometimes and left field sometimes to come up with just a dart and end our hopes. I feel like if he would have scored, we win that game. Yeah, so that was a crusher for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we continue to have confidence, though, against their closer, Kenley Jensen. We saw some success from against him last year. You remember that game when Hunter Renfroe walked it off on the grand slam, and they got to him this year again. So we'll see how things go. But you mentioned it, Brian, such a well-rounded team with the Dodgers. We really didn't see much of Mookie Betts in the series last week, so we'll probably see more of him this week. What's your expectation in these 4 games, Brian? We'll see Luis Perdomo starting tonight for the Padres, and then Garrett Richards, Zach Davies, and then Chris Paddock in the finale. What are you hoping for?
Well, my expectations are tempered or tampered, whatever the word is that I'm trying to find there for tonight. It's the type of game where you look up and you're like, okay, the Dodgers are going to score 10 runs against our bullpen day if we're starting with Perdomo. But who knows? Like, Perdomo could go out and go 3 shutout innings, and then Quantrill comes in and gives you 3 shutout innings, and this is the game that the Padres win. Like, that kind of stuff has happened before, but I'm not expecting that tonight. I know we have the team to compete with them, and we're always like really close. It's just a matter of if we get that extra base hit. When we have guys first and third with nobody out, or a leadoff double. Like, we've had that the last couple of games, and those guys haven't come around to score. And it's going to bite you like it bit us on Saturday against the Diamondbacks. You can't have those kind of things against a team like the Dodgers. Like, you might get away with it against San Francisco or Arizona, but not against LA. So that's the next step I want to see, is how do we – can we get that extra base hit, the extra walk, or, just keep turning the order over? It's something we've been missing. And yeah, the Dodgers have won 2 out of 3 for the last 10 years against us. It's got to change at some point.
Yeah, the Dodgers, they've won 7 of the last division championships. Yeah, you said it, Brian. I would love to see Perdomo / Quantrill go hopefully 5 or 6 innings without giving up more than a couple runs before they turn it over to our bullpen. But I still have a lot of concern with this bullpen through the first couple weeks. Really, Drew Pomeranz is the only Padres pitcher in the bullpen that has performed well. A lot of other guys getting hit pretty well. So we'll see how that plays out. We're going to see Dustin May tonight, and we saw some of the stuff that he had. He made Manny Machado look pretty silly on that 99-mile-per-hour two-seam fastball that moved about 2 feet left to right.
I know. That should not be okay.
Yeah, he's got some stuff. So a very difficult task for the Padres in the opener. I am hopeful that we split this series. I would be very happy with that, especially going on the road and seeing how we match up against these Dodgers. From an offensive perspective, I really like what this Padres team is coming into. We saw what they were able to do without Eric Hosmer. You were able to plug in Jake Cronenworth at first. You have Ty France. A lot of these guys can fulfill that DH role. You have some flexibility with the outfield as well, with Myers, Pham, and Olivares in those corner outfield spots, and any of them able to spot up in that DH position as well. So what are you seeing? Anything in particular from the Padres offense, Brian?
Well, I'm excited to have Eric Hosmer back. Yesterday going up against a lefty and he had just come back for one game, I could see where, they wanted to get him an extra day, especially knowing they're going into the Dodgers series. So I'm excited to see how he fits into this lineup and how everything builds kind of around that. Because that's a big piece to be missing. That having someone in the lineup like him just makes the lineup so much deeper. And if you can have a guy like a Will Myers, who's like your 6th or 7th best hitter in the lineup, that's a pretty deep lineup. So, I'm just excited to see how it fits in for the extended period of time here with Hosmer healthy and able to go. I'm imagining we're going to see Cronenworth in there on a daily basis. He didn't start against the lefty yesterday, but, most of the time he's going to be in that starting lineup because he's earned that spot. And then, whoever else is in either the DH role, if it's not Myers, or if Myers is DHing, then Olivares plays in the outfield. And if Myers is playing in the outfield, maybe France hits the DH. There's a lot of options. We're still not getting the huge production out of the catcher spot, but for the most part, plugging in Hosmer makes the lineup a whole lot deeper. And I'm just excited to see how they do for an entire series against, the standard bearer in the National League for the last decade. And let's go in there and punk them.
Yeah, you mentioned Will Myers. That's one guy that I'm happy to see have a pretty decent season. This is a guy who's struggled the last couple years. There seemed to be a little bit of a beef between him and manager Andy Green from the last couple years. This is a guy that we were all expected to, get dealt in some kind of trade this offseason, but it never happened. He's had a better approach at the plate this year, and he's been getting a start in the majority of games over there at right field. So that's been good to see. A name we haven't mentioned, who we should mention all day, every day, any day, and that's Fernando Tatis Jr., who had himself a series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, 4 home runs, leadoff home runs in back-to-back games, the first and second game. In the second game, he had 2 home runs. He's tied for the lead in the National League, or maybe across majors, with 8 home runs. There was just an article on ESPN put out today how this kid is not only the face of the franchise for the Padres, but on his way to becoming the face of the franchise for Major League Baseball as a whole. Brian, we love this guy. We've been talking about him since the day he started for the Padres last year in 2019. Even after this series, what do you have to say about FTJ?
I love the guy. He is the type of talent that you just look at and you feel like you can build as the cornerstone of a franchise. The article that you referenced, they talk about, he wants to have a statue at Petco Park of himself. And right now the statues at Petco Park of players are Tony Gwynn and Trevor Hoffman. So he has that type of ceiling where he could blow through that and become, the face of, like you said, baseball, but of San Diego for the next decade, 2 decades even potentially. I just couldn't be more proud of how proud he is of us. And he represents San Diego so well. He represents the Dominican Republic really well. We're so lucky to have him. And there's not even really words to describe it except for just, he makes me very proud. The only Padre jersey I have of the new set, right now I want to get all of them because they're just all so awesome. But I have the white pinstripe, and it's a Tatis jersey. So that tells you that's the guy who I want to rep on my back. So
Yeah, I mean, such a pleasure to watch. You rarely see somebody this young, in their first 100 games or so have this amount of success. And then you start thinking, at what point do you give this guy a long-term contract? And I don't have that answer because, the team has so much control over players for the first 5-6 years. So you normally don't see a long-term contract towards the end of that. But again, this is a kid you want to lock up as soon as possible. You would think he is going to get the biggest contract in major league or in major sports history. You've seen Mookie Betts with a big contract this year. Trout, of course, a $400 million deal last year. Patrick Mahomes in the NFL with nearly a $500 million deal. So it's hard to know where or when that's going to come, but you got to think it's got to be one of those big numbers at some point in the next few years. But I hope that he does continue to have that mentality that he wants to be here and become a mainstay in the city of San Diego. So we'll see how things go with him, but so much fun. This is like an athlete that this city deserves for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
So we'll see. One other thing I wanted to get your point of view on, Brian, since you're kind of our uniforms guru, is the San Diego Padres military camos that they wear on Sunday home games. We've seen a variety of them throughout the years from, kind of a brown and beige to a green to a blue jersey that we've seen the last few years. This year with the new jersey set, they have two different camos that they wear. One that's a little bit more green dominant, and then the one that we saw yesterday against the Diamondbacks, again, a little bit more of a beige and brown color. How do you like these jerseys? And then I know there's a little bit of a kicker that you got that you would love to see added to these jerseys in the future.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. I'll try to keep it concise, but on one hand, I've always thought it's a cool tribute. San Diego's a very military town, so it's like a nod to your hometown. And again, I'm into that. I have the most civic pride for San Diego ever, and I understand that this is a military town. So I'm totally on board with it being the Sunday tradition. I've liked it from the beginning. One thing that I think that they should do, and I thought they should have done, was tie more of the new color scheme into the uniforms. So one little proposed change that I had, and you saw the picture, and we'll put it up here in just a second, just add yellow to the jerseys. So right now, both of the camos have the yellow Friar patch on the sleeve, and it looks really good. And then when they bat, they wear their normal standard brown helmets with the yellow SD on it. I think that looks really good. But when they go in the field, they wear like a green, hat with white SD on it, and it's not the brown and gold. I think they can still totally wear the brown and gold hat, or at least put a yellow SD on the hat and then give a little bit of yellow outline to the jerseys. Just make them more Padres in the new version of the Padres that we see. So that's all. Just try to tie them in a little bit more than they did. And it would just take a little bit of yellow to do that. And then they'll pop, man, and you'll be able to know this is the San Diego Padres.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. As it stands right now, the Padres, outlined in white, it just doesn't quite stand out as much. And again, I think I've always liked a bright color to go along with camouflage. Whether you see like hunting gear or whatever, it's always like a bright lime green or neon orange, and I think that yellow would look so good.
Even the hat you're wearing right now has that pop to it. Like, look how good the yellow looks on the hat. Like, man, the color scheme, I don't know if I would have dreamt it up, but now that I see it and with the mock-up that I did, I think it looks really sharp, and it does make those things stand out. So that's all I'd do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk to our people over at the Padres this offseason and
all right, let's
draft up a few samples for them.
I'm with that.
So the Padres play the Dodgers this week, a 4-game set. It's hard to believe that after this series, we'll be a third of the way through the regular season in baseball.
Man, that's crazy.
I think that'll give us a good barometer of where the Padres stand. Looking pretty good at 8-6 right now. As it stands, I think we would have one of the wild card spots if the playoffs were to start today.
Yep.
Well, let's move on to a couple other topics in the sports world before we end this thing. Fun to see golf happen again. We've seen a few tournaments, but major golf now being played, and we just saw the PGA Championship this weekend. Relatively unknown young man, 23-year-old Colin Morikawa, wins after he just hits an amazing shot on the 16th hole.
Yeah.
A drivable par 4, puts it on the green, 7 feet, makes the eagle putt to give him the lead by 2, and he ended up winning by 2. How much fun was it for you to watch this weekend, Brian?
That was awesome. And I've said this before, but I really like, especially in golf or just in any sport in general, but especially in golf, and like we saw yesterday, when players make shots to win games. Not like, but we missed a ton and everybody was missing their putts at the end and the one person who just missed the fewest. No, it's whoever makes the shots. Paul Casey made a ton of shots and it looked like he was probably going to have enough. But then Morikawa, like you said, that shot on 16 and the tee shot was good enough. Like it's one of the best shots in major championship golf history. But the fact that he made the putt and he walks away with the 2, like that totally made it. If he had missed that putt, then the shot loses a little bit of its luster. So that's what I was watching for, is after he made the shot, I was like, okay, got to make this putt. And they had that really cool angle. Like some of the camera angles that we're seeing on golf right now have just been awesome. And yeah, the fact that he hit that, I was like, okay, he's going to win. I just wonder how it's going to go. And then, he hit really solid shots and almost made putts on 17 and 18 as well. That was just a great finishing stretch for a guy who has burst onto the scene, earlier this year, winning an event and, only being on the PGA Tour for just over a year, and just the mark that he's made. And, he's just a super likable guy, always smiling, hitting great shots, really solid with the putter. And yeah, he's an easy dude to root for sure.
Yeah, certainly. It looks to have a very good career ahead of himself.
Yeah.
A lot of big names on the leaderboard throughout the weekend, so that always makes the weekend a little bit more juicy if you're watching a major golf event. One of our favorites, Xander Schauffele, player at San Diego State, had another great major performance, finished tied for 10th. So we're always rooting for him, hoping that he'll bring a major victory to San Diego at some point. Another San Diego favorite, a golf favorite, Phil Mickelson, played well enough to make the cut, although he didn't play too well over the weekend. But more notably, he joined the broadcast team. I didn't really get a chance to watch much of it outside of some of the highlights from it. But Brian, what was it like having Phil added to the broadcast?
It just added such a fun dimension to it. And, there were some awkward moments between him and Faldo, but the interplay with Jim Nance and even with Nick Faldo, like it worked really well. Phil's so knowledgeable, and it's so rare to have someone who is literally in the tournament who has faced these putts and these shots and these pin positions. And it's not just like, oh yeah, when I played in this event, or when it was here 14 years ago, I had that same shot. It's like, hey, I was just out there a half hour ago and I had that same shot, and it's going to do this and it's going to do that. And he's just, man, he's so good with all of his analysis. And it was kind of like when we watched the match and you hear all the interplay that he had with Tom Brady, and where he's explaining like, well, no, this is what's going to happen here, and this is why, and blah, like just such cool stuff. And the way that he explains it, like that was a really unique moment. When he first came on, it was like, oh, here's Phil in the booth for a couple minutes. And then, an hour plus later and he's still on the broadcast, and just added so much. I feel like if it wasn't for how competitive he is and the fact that he wants to be out there and continue to win, like he'd be a shoo-in in the booth. I don't know if he'd want to give it all up like Faldo has to be the lead analyst, but if he ever decides to hang it up on the course, then there's a spot for him in the broadcast booth for sure.
Yeah, he certainly has a career there if he wants it. I've heard, some people kind of compare him to kind of how Tony Romo was
Yeah.
going into football, how he would be with golf commentary. So we'll see about that.
And
One more.
Jim Nance is the best broadcaster in the world, in my opinion. And he makes those guys look so good too. He stays out of the way, gives them nice openings to do things. So it was perfect pairing there. I know they know each other well. So I just wanted to say that little part. I just, anytime I can give some love to Jim Nance, I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. One final topic I just want to pick your brain on, Brian, is football this fall. I mean, it seems like the NFL is planning to go ahead forward. We saw a few dozen players opt out of the season, but college football has been a little bit more of the story this week. The Mountain West, where our San Diego State Aztecs play, they've canceled all their fall sports, including football. They've indefinitely postponed them, maybe playing in the spring, but of course it's a fluid situation. On the other end, you've seen some strong voices in college football voice their support for playing football this fall, whether it's been Jim Harbaugh from Michigan, quarterback from Clemson, Trevor Lawrence. You even saw President Trump today tweet that he wants college football to be played. Brian, do you think we'll see any semblance of college football this fall?
I don't know. If we do, it's going to be something involving just the Power 5 schools. And I think it'll totally change the landscape of college football as we know it moving forward. I'm really interested to see when the first domino falls with the Power 5. So far, we've already seen a couple of independents. We've seen the Ivy League, some of the FBS schools, and then 2 of the Group of 5 conferences cancel their seasons, or at least postpone. So I'm just waiting for that first Power 5 domino to fall and see where that leads, because it's a slippery slope, man. I really don't know. I don't know how they can play. I agree. They're probably safer being in their little campus bubble and getting their, being together, probably safer than being on their own. But it's hard to imagine how you play a college football season right now.
Yeah, there's so much to consider. So again, it's really day to day with a lot of other sports and just a lot of other changing protocol that we've seen just in regular life. So
the thing I want to see, in that I'm very curious about, especially for the Aztecs' sake, and I wore the BCSC black and red today. Little shout out for the Aztecs, because I feel bad that the season is being postponed for the Aztecs. But I'd like to see a shift in how college football runs itself. Like every other school or every other sport, San Diego State Athletics have an opportunity to compete for a national title, whether it's sports on the women's side, the volleyballs, soccers of the world, or on the men's side with baseball, basketball. Like the Aztecs get into the tournament if they're the best team in the Mountain West. They have a shot. In football, It's totally closed off. There's the Power 5 and there's everybody else. So I would love to see some dynamic where if you are a Division I and football bowl subdivision and not a championship subdivision team, you actually can compete for a title. Especially with San Diego State about to break ground on the new, expansion in Mission Valley, the new stadium, all that. I hope that this is the type of seismic shift that you need, where you can just kind of start over from scratch with Division I college football and figure out a way to make it open, equitable, where the Aztecs have a chance, because right now they do not, and that bothers me.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that, Brian. Great point. You would love to see more opportunity for different teams across different conferences to have that opportunity. So we'll see how things go. But I think that's going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for joining me, Brian, and we'll do it again here in a few more days.
Andy, a lot of fun. See you in a couple of days, man.